As the voice from on high said, I'm Ian Myers. I'm a solution architecture manager with AWS. I've been with Amazon for about 4.5 years, and my background is in managing big data systems, but nothing quite like some of the scale that we see our customers building today. And so it's a real privilege to be here. One of the things I wanted to talk with you guys about today was one of our beliefs, which is that cloud is the best place for big data and analytics. And I wanted to talk about why that would be and why this is one of the best places for you to get started with building systems that can work with all of the data that you might need to throw at your analysis algorithms. Customers are coming to us with new analysis requirements every day. And that is really driven by the different types of data that can be captured through new sensors, new channels, and also because the volume of data is growing so quickly. Even small enterprises may be able to lay their hands on truly petabyte scale of data and be able to monetize that in ways that as long as their environment can work with them, they can take advantage of that. And cloud computing is a great place to throw these problems, because we can give you a virtually unlimited amount of compute and storage and networking options, but also give you the flexibility to chop and change them as you need to deal with those requirements as they come in. The data sets that customers are bringing to us, even for initial projects, can be much larger than traditional production-grade applications from 5 years ago. And through things like AWS's open data sets, you have the ability to draw on data sets from a variety of different sources and integrate those into your applications, as well as being able to say yes to your end users. Whatever requirement they may want to be able to do, if there's the need to capture data, you can now say yes. You don't have to think about racking new storage, buying more disks, doing capacity planning. You simply start with the data and work back to the business value. And cloud is a great place to bring that kind of problem and take advantage of our virtually unlimited capacity. The other thing that people are requiring extensively is the ability to be more agile with how they build applications. Once upon a time, when we wanted to set out to build an analytical application, we would sort of start with a couple of years even program to come up with some business value. And as we've seen the iterative development style taking on in web application development and API development, there is a business expectation that our analytics applications can be built in the same way, and they can. But it requires that you have access to resources that match that iterative and experimental style of deployment and scaling, as we heard from Misguided. It's a great example of how you can start small and then scale to an extremely high scale of environment. And then again, as was quite well pointed out, modern web applications and API-driven applications need to be able to support variable workloads. Analytics applications are no different. While the front door of a retail application like Misguided needs to be able to be very responsive to customer demand, on the back end, the ability to understand behavior of the customers is going to be subject to that same variable data rates and same variable volumes. And you may also have a very seasonal demand in your business that you need to be able to scale up and down to meet. And so we're able to offer with cloud computing the ability to only pay for what you use, and so your cost base is very small when you have a quiet period, and then as your traffic grows, you're only paying for the capacity that you consume. And as Ian pointed out, as you move through proof of concept, productionization, and then into optimization, we actively work to help you keep those costs low. We also now need to focus on very, very fast time to results. The analytical applications that we're working with are born of a responsive web environment, rather than the idea that you would run a report and maybe go to lunch and come back a few hours later and get your results. We need to be very iterative in how analysts are able to work. And so what can drive that then is a cloud computing model where we're not as concerned with straight line performance as creating a priority for the speed of getting a result. And that is driven in many cases by parallel computing, and something that the cloud is able to bring to you with parallel compute workloads like AWS Lambda, AWS EMR. And so we can prioritize then how quickly do we get a result. Even if as a small business, I might be doing something that I never would have dreamed possible. I'm going to throw 2,000 machines at a problem for an hour because the cost base is approachable to have that level of parallelization, which it wouldn't be if I had to go and buy all of that kit up front. The other way that cloud is a great place for your analytics applications is that it really isn't about having one tool to do everything for you. One of the things that we prioritize at Amazon, and certainly within Amazon Web Services, is the ability to give you selection of how you solve a problem, what tool you use. So rather than you coming to AWS and saying, I would like to do some analysis, please, and we say, yes, here's how you do it, we want you to have the flexibility to create an analytical application that is sympathetic to your business, to your developers, and to how you want to run your project. That means you need flexibility of what tool you run. And they tend to fall into some high-level categories. And this is painting with a very broad brush, but when we look at the ability to store data, we need to offer an environment that's virtually unlimited in scale. We need to allow you to apply very flexible and strong security, where you own the portions of security controls that are appropriate for your business and for the data. And crucially, we need to allow you to store data in the way that makes most sense for you. We want you to be able to select a data structure, a data format, and a layout that fits your application, rather than saying, well, here's how the tool does it, and you just have to work with that. From the analysis perspective, you're going to require, powerful and fast tools, but again, have a large selection of what you use. Your developers that are delivering these applications will have different skills. And sometimes it's the right thing to govern what tools and create a very narrow definition of what tools can be used to solve a problem. But in many cases, that's driven by the fact that you have to choose a tool up front, and you have to buy it and write a big check in order to enable your developer to have access to that tool. What if we could give you tools where the license was included, and you just paid for them when you were using them? Well, now you can be much more flexible about which tool you choose. You can have more variety and enable developer productivity. And then on the presentation layer, we need to give you the ability to do really, really rapid data discovery and data exploration, but also generate those pixel-perfect reports that you're sending out to your customers, internal or external. And it isn't always going to be about AWS's service and tools, as we'll see in a minute, but also third-party tools on AWS. So when we map those problems onto AWS services, as Ian said earlier, we have more than 70 services available, all of which are very, very useful in their own right and designed to be integrated with each other in a way that make them into an assemblable system. So for storage, we have managed block storage, object storage, and file systems. We have managed databases, whether that's NoSQL or relational. We have managed data warehousing and streaming. And then as we move into the analysis world, you can see we have a wide variety of SQL tools. We have managed Hadoop, Spark, Presto. And then we have the ability for you to run much more advanced analytics, deep learning algorithms, AI, and predictive analytics with a robust workflow that sits around those tools. And then on the presentation layer, you're going to take advantage of things like Kibana dashboards. You're going to do rapid development and discovery with tools like Amazon QuickSight. And you're going to take advantage of third-party software using the AWS Marketplace, which is an online store where you're able to launch software such as SAS or MarkLogic, JasperSoft, SAP, and pay not just for the license by the hour, but also the environment that it runs on. And you can stand that up within your account in a secure manner, very, very quickly, experiment with it, use it for your application, and then turn it off again. So this is being used by a wide variety of enterprise customers, customers such as the NASDAQ, Standard & Poor's, or NASA JPL. And in order to enable these kind of businesses to be productive, scalable, and secure in the cloud, we have to start with security first. As Steve Schmitz talked about this morning, we have a wide variety of security attestations and accreditations for the AWS services, and you're able to choose which services support which certifications and controls to meet your application requirement. So if you have a PCI DSS requirement, then you can choose a service that has PCI DSS certification, and it will help to enable your application to gain PCI DSS compliance. And always we're backing that up with security services that are native to your account, services like CloudTrail. CloudTrail gives the ability globally to have everything that happens on your account logged and stored into Amazon S3, but also gives you the ability to stream process those application security events so that you can determine custom behavior, perhaps, if that was a requirement. So some examples of what people are doing this: FINRA is a regulatory body in the United States for broker-dealers. Their market surveillance platform is implemented on AWS and allows them to surveil about 35 billion events, and they use a combination of Amazon S3, which is a highly scalable object storage platform for files, and then the EMR service to run queries against that data at massive scale. And they found, about 40% savings by building that architecture on AWS, and particularly recently they've been able to scale to even 2x that volume in a cost-effective fashion. Another enterprise customer, which is certainly worthy of note, is the SEC. The SEC built their Midas platform for market surveillance, and they're able to move from analyzing billions of data points in a matter of weeks or months down to hours, which gives them a lot more flexibility in how they understand what a market is doing. Another one is NTT Docomo, the largest mobile service provider in Japan. They were coming from an environment with significant pain points, with tens of terabytes of data, 6 petabytes of data in total, and really not giving their internal customers the service that they required. And they moved that environment onto Amazon Redshift, which is our managed MPP data warehouse, onto a system comprising 4,500 virtual CPUs. That data set, when brought into Amazon Redshift, was only 2 petabytes. And they went 10 times faster with significantly more agility of the service they were offering to their customers. But even better is to hear it from a customer that I've had the privilege of working with on and off for more than 2 years. And I'd like to welcome to the stage John Kundert, the CTO of the Financial Times, to talk about their experience of transforming their digital business model with data.
Thank you, Ian. Hello, good afternoon. I've got 20 minutes. I typically overrun, so I'm going to go quite quickly and hopefully stick to the target. First of all, just a little introduction to the FT. The FT is an old organization. We have a lot of history. It's a big brand. There's a lot of value in that brand built up over 128 years. We are not as big in terms of people or physical locations as the brand suggests. There is something really beautiful about the FT. We're all pretty much, or the center is all pretty much located in one building. And that's fantastic because it enables us to really talk to each other and make some key decisions. And those decisions aren't just what are we doing, but it's the way we do it. In 1995, we launched our first website. We started the journey on our business transformation. We obviously didn't quite know what that looked like at that point in time, but what we did begin to realize, and what I'm going to talk about today, is how the growth of the digital proposition inside the FT has transformed the organization and transformed the amount of data we have inside the organization and the understanding of our customers. I think for me, data and customers and business intelligence, all these things go together. Certainly for the FT, it's been a significant transformation, going to a world where its customers were far away through a print distribution network to one where the customer can interact with you directly, interact with you as a journalist, interact with your product. What we've done, and what I'm really going to talk about, is the building of a data platform. But before I go into the detail, I just wanted to show a couple of places where that's made a significant impact. The first one is inside editorial. So you imagine an organization which is 128 years old. You imagine a newsroom full of a workflow which is established and geared entirely towards printing a newspaper. That means you have very specific deadlines, because a newspaper needs to be printed, it needs to be distributed, it needs to get to its endpoint before 7 o'clock in the morning. That embedded a whole way of working inside the newsroom. What we've done through our data, and this is one of many use cases, what we've done through our data is inform the newsroom about the customer, inform the newsroom about the content that customer is reading, but also begin to enable the editorial processes to think about how they can reach and engage with those customers, how they can extend the reach of our content. But also, it enables them to understand the habits of a customer. So when they read, what time of day they read, and that has an impact for the organization. It makes them think about whether they're aligned optimally to a new digital world. Another example here is just distributing our intelligence directly with our customers, so our customers understand, A, what data we have on them, but also how they are using it and how that might compare to our competitors. This increasingly is lending our data flows to move directly into product and product propositions. Another good example here is our data which we share with B2B knowledge managers. So these are folks inside big organizations who manage knowledge and distribute that knowledge across the organization. And just a few factoids around our platform. So the platform our products are built on. So we're 20 terabytes in size, 700 million records updated every day, and 91,000 queries across the organization. Best case latency for our events and data collection engines is about 1 second. Okay, so our data story, I'm going to spin back quickly to 2012. So 2012, we recognized that the organization was using data across editorial, across B2B subscription businesses, across the B2C subscription business, across the editorial, across the advertising business. But all of those people and all of those organizations had built up great products leveraging data, but in a highly tactical, bespoke way. This meant that all of that data, which was coming from all of those source systems, were integrated with third parties building something which was very valuable, but very bespoke. And we began to realize not only the value of that, but the fact that that was entirely unscalable and unsustainable. Each part of the business kind of happy, but also recognizing that the rate of change couldn't really be sustained. That's important because those businesses, not data, not products, but those businesses themselves needed to continually change. The transformation which is happening inside our particular industry does not stop. So we had all these kind of systems all over the place. We kind of got together, recognized that we were gradually crawling, slowing down, not quite getting the momentum we needed. So we decided that we should build a proper data platform, get all of our data in one place, so we can start to build products in a sustainable way, so those products being BI products for the internal organization. So we all got together, we put a little team together, we went through a very conventional waterfall route, and what we discovered was by the time we went through all of this process, that we really got to the point where when we were ready to do work, or the work we were ready to do was kind of obsolete. Just doing a legal contract took us about 6 months, I think, to get to done. All those requirements we gathered from the businesses had evolved. By the time we had delivered something, they would have said, this is redundant, I don't need that anymore. In parallel with all of this, the businesses didn't stop talking to their third parties, they carried on going. So even everything which we were trying to do, the organisation and their third parties were running faster. So it was a real problem, and in fact we had no escape velocity. The whole thing just didn't really work. But the FT, being the FT and being a great organisation, it just took a step back and looked at that, and after maybe about 9 months, just recognised it was not the way forward. We needed a different approach. So we didn't fail, we learnt, and we decided to change our world and to give it another go. So this second story is about that second attempt. We wanted to go back to basics. We wanted to think about how we could organise ourselves better to deliver something meaningful and to deliver it fast. To get to the same end goal, but to do that in a way which is delivering value along the way. So the first thing we did, we thought about how we organised ourselves. Previously, due to our history and our setup and where we got to, we had data engineers which were kind of sitting outside technology. They were sitting inside an analytics function. This meant that their relationship with technology and with all those systems they wanted to integrate with wasn't as connected as we would like it to be. They belonged to a different team. They belonged to a different tribe. So we really reorganized ourselves to put all those data engineers inside the CIO technology function inside the FT. They still co-located with all the analytics and the data science folk, and now we actually called ourselves a virtual data team, our bottom layer acting as one unit, but belonging to different parts of the organization. And that actually was really important for us. It changed the whole conversation internally. Having reorganized ourselves, we wanted to make sure we understood where we were going. We didn't want to do an RFP, or we didn't want to do business requirements, but we wanted to make sure that having created this team, or created this organizational structure, that bit knew its destination. So our vision statement enabled all of the FT, and all of the FT for me means reach, and its products to easily discover and trust our data, and business intelligence in near real time. And in some ways, that actually feels, to me, as CTO, a bit like a kind of journalistic mission. You know, we want to reach as many people as we can, and we want them to trust for things which we do, and trust for data which we're producing so they can make decisions. That's hopefully what the FT do for you when you read it. So having defined a vision statement, we also wanted to be clear on what outcomes we were going to try and achieve. So measurable outcomes as much as we can. So the ownership of our intellectual property was key. The fact that all these third parties were doing amazing things for us, but we didn't know how. We couldn't replicate. It was all kind of locked down. They, in fact, understood our data better than we did. When we changed our data, we didn't know the implications of that. So owning our IP, reducing our costs. Our costs were significant for the FT. We were paying these third parties to deliver, so there was a clear cost there. If you actually looked at the support the internal organization needed to give to those third parties, there was a cost there. If you actually tried to wrap total cost of ownership, it was probably the second biggest program of work within that technology sphere. We also knew, just through our own experience, that our requirements were only going to go one way. So the opportunity cost of doing nothing would be significant. would be really significant to the organization. Extending our reach, so reach is how many people are really integrated or touching the data or the business intelligence which we're producing, and then measuring the return or trying to understand the return. So not just the fact that they can get there and reach that data, but it has some value to them. It's informing a decision, it's playing a role. So having got to our outcomes, we then built a small, diverse team. I think the two things which I want to say here is the people inside this team. Small means it was, I think, probably 7, 8 people. But the diversity of the team and the fact that that team understood the FT and were part of the FT for a significant period meant they were able to run fast. I think that was really important for them to have that history, given the fact that on our next slide we talk about empowerment. We decided we were going to trust this team to make some big decisions for us. And that letting go, that no RFP, that no central control function was a big thing, and it led to that whole empowerment model. So the fact that they could go and decide what technology to use, the fact that they could go and decide what part of the business they were going to support first, all that lay in the team. The only thing we insisted on was that their experiments were continuous and were small. And when they learned things, they fed that back. So we really said, it didn't matter what tech you use, you go the AWS route, you go another route, you choose, but you have to be completely open. And when you have a debate and when you can't decide which way to go, you test, you cut the problem down, you make it small, you test, you feed that back. And as long as we can see that working, we're confident to let you run. Not far behind that, we did think quite hard about communication. We are aware that within our history of the FT, and if you think about communication being not far off what we do, that we can communicate a lot, but the quality in that comms, certainly within projects and programs of work, doesn't always add a lot of value. And it does create a lot of drag inside a project. Every time you have a traditional stakeholder meeting, everybody runs around and says, oh my God, what are we going to say? If you can't find any content, you kind of think, I have to make some content up. You have to do your weekly updates to these stakeholders, to your own network, to the individual business. And we said we actually thought that that was fairly low value in the bigger scheme of things. So we said to the team, don't send us updates just for the sake of sending us updates, but do talk to us if you ever have a problem. Do talk to us when you learn things. Do talk to us when you have something meaningful to say. And that was quite a change, and I think it actually had a meaningful impact on the team's ability to really accelerate and run. It's certainly asking engineers and a small team to talk to the MDs of different businesses creates a level of stress and creates a level of distraction which really does detract. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the unguided missiles. So these are things which we didn't really see coming and certainly took us, not quite by surprise, but certainly took us time to reconcile and understand. The first was one around governance and data quality. So we recognized that while we were delivering value and we were doing this kind of continually through the duration of this project, there was some things we just didn't really understand. There were some things the business didn't really understand. There were some things the business didn't really understand, but they trusted. But when we said, what do you trust? What does it mean? They didn't know. So we would go to the the business and say, you get this piece of intelligence. It tells you how many people cancelled this week. What does that mean? What is a cancellation? Is it someone who stopped paying? Is it someone who actively withdrew their subscription? Is it someone who's come to the end of their subscription and just didn't renew? Is it someone who's in some kind of suspense? They said, well, I don't know. I just always read it. I know I want it to go down, but I don't know what it means. And then you go the other way and you say, OK, let's look at the data underneath defining the current statement. And again, nobody really understands what that data driving that definition means. So that certainly took us a long time to engage with the business and in some way get them to really think about how they are measuring their own performance and what they wanted. And that did take us a lot longer. We didn't quite see that coming, or certainly not to that extent. The other area, which I really just felt useful to throw out there, was the interdependencies we had across all our other programs of work. So it's worth recognizing that within this effort, in parallel, we were transforming pretty much the whole of our technology across the digital business. So our membership platform, which encompasses digital rights, subscription, payment, processes and systems. Our publishing platform, which is responsible for taking a piece of content, describing it, and making it publishable through any product. Both of those were under transformations at this point in time. So when we started this project, we were kind of looking at current integrations and current systems which may be producing intelligence. But when we played back and we tried to integrate with those integration points, we recognized all of our world was changing. So we kind of had legacy and we had new. Those programs of work responsible for their programs of work really had a focus, and that interchange became more complex. This is where our size came into play. The fact that we are quite small in the bigger scheme of things, the fact that we're all in one building enabled us to work through those, but it was a more complex process than we originally anticipated. Okay, so we all do this to drive stuff, to drive outcomes. The FT now only talk about outcomes. We never talk about replacing a CRM system. We only talk about improving sales efficiency or improving conversion. We never talk about replacing anything. We only talk about the outcomes which we want to achieve. So here's a nice outcome. Given the fact that our growth in data has been continuous and probably growing exponentially, we've seen our overall costs for running our data platform come down, and it's pretty much steadied on a steady line the last year. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal given the amount of data which we are now managing and have in one place in our data platform. So that's the red line coming down. These costs have reduced as we've one by one removed all our third parties. And the beautiful thing here is not only have our lines, as our red line, have our costs reduced, but our reach and value have grown at the same time. And we've kind of flicked it a little bit. So this green line is the analytics function inside the FT, the data scientists, the people who are converting our business intelligence into meaningful, actionable stuff, or people who are finding values. So from a business's perspective, there's more effort, more investment in the last mile delivering that value. There's less money in the machinery in place to enable that value to be delivered. And that's really big for the FT. Our reach, so I talked about reach. We now have data reaching everywhere. We have 2,000 employees. We have 500 active users, 500 plus, engaging with our data platform or the products which are built inside that data platform. It goes all the way up to the boardroom. The boardroom are using the data we produce to inform decision making. It goes all the way down into product. So when we deliver or when we produce, develop new features in our product, it's the data platform which is harvesting the data, which is informing the A/B test, which is influencing what features we release and to whom. It's continuing to drive innovation within advertising and our advertising propositions, and is absolutely fundamental to the B2B and B2C subscription businesses. Equally, we enable technology and technologists to access that data, to innovate, to explore, to understand where there is opportunity, maybe to influence whether it's personalization or influence new product ideas. And ultimately, I think we see this going all the way through, certainly I would hope it goes all the way through, to developing products and stories in English form to play back into the newsroom. So the newsroom are reading stories about the stories which they're writing about. So reach is going everywhere. The value, I think probably just a couple of stories here. It's driven at a strategic level our whole restructuring of our B2C proposition. We've moved from a counted content model, which enables you to consume a certain amount of content before you're asked to pay, into a trial model where you're asked to subscribe to a trial, and then you convert at a later point in time. The other area, which I think is just worth drawing on briefly, is the cultural change inside the FT. So as we become more data-driven across the organisation, as that influences those competing interests inside the organisation, we find that data is just central to those conversations. And that actually accelerates our ability to change. And change is the only constant. As our business model continually is under pressure, as the world changes from print to digital and beyond, whether it's advertising or it's paid for content, that change will not stop. I think the final point here is just one on governance and trust. So I think we certainly are confident that the whole of the organisation are at a point where not only can they access that data, but they trust it. And again, playing it all the way back to our core values as an organisation and as a journalistic organisation, trust is everything. It doesn't matter if you're producing great BI, if you've got great reach. If people look at a number and say, it does nothing for me, I don't believe it, it's wrong, they will walk away. If they walk away, it will take forever to get them back. So I think that's the probably last point. And thank you.
Thanks again. Awesome story. And the points that John made around ownership and trust and minimizing risk through fast experimentation are really important ones. So how can you get started, and how can you consider the analytics journey on AWS? Start by learning from other customers. There were some links I showed up earlier, which are some of our big data case studies. And you can go through and read and hear it from the customers directly, as you did from the Financial Times. We would also encourage you to have a look at some of our partner-provided labs, things like Security with Vormetric, or Capgemini and Accenture offering labs and test drives that you can take advantage of. And not have to long startup time to get your hands on some of this technology. And then also use some of our webinar resources that are an ongoing offering into the market, as well as boot camps and self-paced labs at events like AWS reInvent. And we've also started offering a new course on big data. So with that, I'll be here the rest of the day, happy to answer any questions you have after. And thank you very, very much indeed for your time this afternoon.